So imagine you're standing out on like a freezing cold field in Torrelavega.
Oh, I know that feeling all too well.
Right. And the physical education teacher blows a whistle and you just, begrudgingly drop down, reach for your toes, and just hold that stretch.
Just shivering and bored, yeah.
Exactly. You're just waiting to actually play the game.
Mhm.
But, well, what if I told you that by holding that static stretch, you are literally wiring your brain to make your body slower, weaker, and significantly more prone to injury?
I mean, it sounds completely counterintuitive, right? Because it goes against decades of conventional wisdom.
Yeah.
But you aren't just making yourself slower in that exact moment. You are actually actively suppressing your nervous system's ability to protect your joints.
Which is just wild to me. That completely reframes the way I look at getting ready for any sort of workout.
Oh, absolutely.
And honestly, it's exactly why we're dedicating this entire deep dive to you, the second ESO students from Colegio Sagrados Corazones.
Shout out to you guys.
Yeah, today's mission is to basically tear down everything you thought you knew about warming up. Because we want to show you that it isn't just a chore. It's a biological cheat code.
A cheat code is a great way to look at it.
Right. So we're going to look at the hard science of how you can hack your body to unlock its absolute peak performance before you even step onto a pitch, a court, or, a track.
Yeah, and for you students listening, try to think about this not as something you just have to do for a grade, but as a systematic upgrade to your physical hardware.
Okay, I like this.
Cossport scientists and physical educators, they define a warm-up as a highly sorted, graded set of movements that target all muscles and joints.
Sorted and graded.
Exactly. The goal isn't just to, get warm. It's to force the body into an optimal state of readiness and to drastically reduce the chance of tearing a muscle or a ligament.
So I'm trying to visualize this process. The phrase sorted and graded implies like a strict operating procedure.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of makes me think of trying to start a high-performance race car on a freezing winter morning.
Right? Yeah.
If you just jump in the driver's seat, turn the key, and immediately floor the gas pedal, the engine hasn't been properly lubricated yet. The metal components grind, the pressure builds incorrectly, and, well, you end up blowing a gasket.
That race car analogy works perfectly for the mechanical side of things, but, human biology is vastly more complex than a car engine.
Sure.
When you force a cold human body into an immediate sprint, you're demanding an extreme adaptation from systems that are essentially asleep.
So they just can't keep up.
Right. And when those systems fail to adapt instantly, all that physical stress goes directly to your connective tissues, and your risk of injury just skyrockets.
Man. Okay, so I want to look under the hood, so to
Yeah.
speak. What is physically happening on a microscopic level when we transition from, say, sitting in a classroom to actually starting a structured warm-up?
Well, it triggers this massive biological chain reaction, and it all starts with the cardiovascular system. As you begin mild movement, your heart rate naturally increases. But this isn't just to pump blood blindly. It's a highly targeted delivery system.
Oh, really?
Yeah, your blood vessels actually widen. It's a process called vasodilation, and that pushes a massive surge of oxygen-rich blood directly into the working muscles.
So it's essentially a delivery service bringing fuel to the engine.
It is a delivery service, yeah, but it's equally important as a waste removal service.
Wait, waste removal?
Yeah, because the increased blood flow flushes out the metabolic byproducts that just sit there in resting muscles.
Oh.
And simultaneously, your respiratory rate kicks up. You start breathing heavier, pulling more oxygen into the lungs to supply that circulating blood.
Okay, that makes sense.
So this entire friction and delivery process physically raises the internal temperature of the muscle fibers. And this is where we see a fascinating change in viscosity.
Viscosity, like the thickness of a liquid.
Exactly that. Inside your joints, you have something called synovial fluid. When you're just resting, this fluid is really thick, almost like cold honey. But as your core temperature rises from moving around, that fluid heats up and thins out, turning into this highly efficient, slippery lubricant for your joints. And the heat also makes the muscle fibers themselves far more pliable.
So the engine is warm, the oil has thinned out and is circulating smoothly. I mean, we're basically hitting the first core objective of a warm-up, which is purely preventive, stopping the muscles from snapping under pressure.
Right, prevented is the first one.
But when looking at the modern sports science frameworks, they break the goals down into three distinct categories. Preventive is first. The second is physiological.
Mm-hmm.
And this involves a system I never associated with stretching at all. the nervous system.
And this is perhaps the most critical and honestly most misunderstood part of athletic preparation.
Really?
Yeah, because people tend to view muscles as these independent, rubber band-like structures. But muscles are completely dumb.
What do you mean?
I mean, they don't do anything on their own. Not unless the nervous system sends an electrical impulse telling them to contract.
Wow, okay, I'm trying to wrap my head around this.
Yeah.
Are you saying that warming up is actually about waking up the brain and the spinal cord, not just the physical muscles?
That is the absolute core of modern athletic preparation. Yes. Your nervous system is the main control center.
Okay.
Nerves function by sending electrical signals down these pathways, and those signals actually travel faster when the body's internal temperature is higher.
So if you're cold.
If you're cold, the conduction velocity of those nerves is super sluggish.
Give me a real-world example of what a sluggish nerve signal looks like on the field, though.
Sure. Let's say you're playing basketball and you land awkwardly on the side of your foot.
Ouch. Yeah.
Right. If your nervous system is cold and sluggish, the sensory receptors in your ankle send a danger signal to your brain, but it travels too slowly.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So by the time your brain sends the signal back saying, hey, contract the calf muscle to save the ankle, the ligament has already rolled and torn.
Yikes.
But if you are properly warmed up, those neural pathways are firing at lightning speed. The brain receives the warning and fires that protective muscle contraction in milliseconds, basically saving you from a sprain.
That fundamentally changes how I view preparation. It's not just about making the muscles stretchy. It is literally about speeding up the body's internal internet connection.
That's a great way to put it.
And that leads right into the third objective, which
Yeah.
researchers categorize as mental.
Yeah.
We're talking about psychological readiness, attention, and, focus.
Because the physical and the mental are entirely linked. Just think about a professional tennis player before a Grand Slam final.
Oh, the rituals they do.
Exactly. The warm-up routine serves as a psychological bridge. It transitions the brain out of a resting, easily distracted state and forces it into a hyper-focused competition state.
Right.
It's a ritual that narrows their field of vision strictly to the task at hand.
So for you students at Sagrados Corazones, a warm-up is really a full system boot-up. You're lubricating the joints, turning on the biological internet, and locking in that mental focus.
Precisely.
But achieving all of that requires a pretty strict blueprint. Biomechanics researchers have boiled this down to a rigid set of rules to ensure you don't miss a critical system.
Right. There are specific protocols.
And the first rule is that your warm-up must be orderly.
Yeah, and orderly means we abandon that chaotic approach of, doing a few arm circles immediately followed by a random sprint and then maybe twisting your ankles for a second.
Yeah, I've definitely done that.
We all have. But the prevailing protocol is to always move from the bottom to the top.
Starting at the feet and working your way up. Why is that specific direction so important, though?
Well, partially, it just serves as a mental checklist. If you systematically move from ankles to knees to hips to chest to arms and finally the neck, you literally cannot forget a body part.
Right, that's practical.
But physiologically, starting from the extremities and moving upward helps promote venous return.
Venous return.
Yeah, it assists the body in pushing blood back up toward the heart against gravity.
Oh, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so the second rule is that the warm-up must be gradual. We're slowly increasing the intensity. And the data suggests that by the end of the warm-up, your heart rate should hit a very specific window, right, between 120 and 160 beats per minute. Why is that the magic number?
It all comes down to cellular energy systems. At around 120 beats per minute, you are thoroughly engaging your aerobic system.
Okay, aerobic.
Right, so your body is efficiently using oxygen to create energy. But if you push much past 160 beats per minute before the game even starts, you cross an anaerobic threshold.
And that's bad.
Yeah, because your body can no longer pull in enough oxygen, and you start rapidly accumulating lactic acid in the muscles.
Oh, so you essentially start drowning in your own metabolic waste before the whistle even blows.
Exactly. You're fatiguing yourself before you even start.
Wow. So 120 to 160 means you're definitely sweating and breathing hard, but you could still hold, like a choppy conversation.
Right.
Okay. The third rule is adaptability. The routine has to match the sport. But this actually brings me to a major point of confusion I had when looking at the sources.
Okay, what's that?
Sports scientists state that a proper, complete warm-up needs to be at least 20 minutes long.
Yes.
If I'm a student getting ready for a 50-minute PE class, spending nearly half that time just warming up Seems like a recipe for total exhaustion.
I get that. It's a very valid concern, and it's exactly why we have to break down what those 20 minutes actually consist of.
Okay.
It is not 20 minutes of intense sport-specific drilling. The time is split into two distinct phases to manage your energy effectively. We have the general warm-up, followed by the specific warm-up.
So how do those two phases actually differ in terms of what I'm doing on the field?
The general phase always comes first, and it's purely about raising that core temperature and waking up the nervous system.
Like we talked about earlier.
Right. It involves broad, full-body movements that have absolutely nothing to do with the sport you are about to play. It prepares the organism for survival, essentially.
Okay, and the specific phase.
Once the internal temperature is up, you transition to the specific phase. This is where you rehearse the exact neural patterns of your sport.
Oh.
So if you're playing volleyball, this is when you start doing jumping and spiking motions to, grease the groove of those very specific movement patterns.
Okay, well, this brings us to probably the most controversial part of our entire discussion.
I know where you're going with this.
Yeah, when I picture that general phase, the image burned into my brain from childhood is sitting in a circle on the grass, legs spread wide, reaching for my toes, and holding that painful stretch for 30 seconds while just, talking to my teammates.
Oh, yeah. You are describing traditional static stretching. And for a very long time, that was considered the absolute gold standard for injury prevention.
But the research from organizations like the National Strength and Conditioning Association, the NSCAA, is completely flipping the script on this.
Completely.
They are now suggesting that athletes should entirely exclude static stretching before a training session or a game. I just find it baffling that something we were strictly taught prevents injury might actually be bad for us before we play.
It is a huge paradigm shift. To understand why it's detrimental before an activity, we really have to talk about muscle spindles.
Muscle spindles.
Yeah, they're these tiny sensory receptors buried deep inside your muscle bellies. When you do a static stretch, like aggressively reaching for your toes and just holding it there, you are putting the muscle under extreme tension.
Okay.
The muscle spindles sense this extreme tension and they essentially panic.
They panic.
Yeah, they send an emergency signal to the spinal cord saying, hey, we are stretching too far, shut down the power to this muscle so we don't tear in half.
Wait, the body physically, neurologically turns the muscle off to protect it.
Precisely. It induces this biochemical state of relaxation. And furthermore, a muscle acts a bit like an elastic band. When you stretch it out and hold it there, you temporarily reduce its elasticity.
Oh, man.
So if you statically stretch right before a football match, you are stepping onto the pitch with muscles that have been neurologically commanded to relax and have completely lost their spring-like elastic tension.
You are literally sabotaging your own power output.
You really are.
So if static stretching is out for the warm-up, what's the alternative? How do we prepare the joints without putting the muscle spindles to sleep?
We use what are called dynamic warm-ups. These are functionally based movements where you are actively moving a joint through its full range of motion without ever stopping to hold a stretch.
This targets something sports scientists call the rate of force development, right?
Exactly.
So for our listeners, think of this like a sports car. The rate of force development isn't the car's top speed. It is how incredibly fast the car can accelerate from 0 to 60.
That's a perfect analogy.
Right. When you need to jump for a rebound in basketball, your leg muscles have to go from 0 to 100% power instantly.
And dynamic stretching has been heavily proven to improve that exact metric. It keeps the nervous system stimulated. A great way to think about dynamic movement is like tuning a guitar before a concert. You don't just pull the strings loosely and let them hang. That would be static stretching.
Right.
Instead, you're tightening those strings, creating the exact tension required so that when the brain says, play this note, the muscle snaps to attention and delivers explosive power instantly.
I love that guitar tuning analogy. That's so clear. So let's make this highly actionable for you, the second ESO students at Sagrados Corazones.
Let's do it.
When you walk into your next physical education class, how exactly do you apply this? Sports educators break the general warm-up into specific timed blocks. And phase 1 is displacement, which lasts about 5 to 8 minutes.
Right, and displacement is simply about moving the body through space to initiate that vasodilation we talked about earlier.
The widening of the blood vessels.
Exactly. But it shouldn't just be a monotonous forward jog. You want to move in multiple planes of motion.
So like side to side.
Yeah, jog forward, transition into a lateral shuffle sideways, maybe incorporate some light skipping or bounding. You are actively challenging the nervous system to coordinate the limbs in different directions while elevating your heart rate.
Okay, so we've spent a few minutes shuffling and jogging. We're breathing a little heavier. Phase 2 is joint mobility, taking just 2 to 3 minutes. And this is where we apply that strict bottom-to-top rule, right?
Correct. You plant your feet and begin mobilizing the joints with smooth, controlled rotations.
Okay.
You roll the ankles, then perform knee circles, open up the hips with circular motions, twist the torso, roll the shoulders, the wrists, and then finally, the neck.
Working all the way up.
Yeah, you're physically churning that thick synovial fluid in every single joint until it warms up and turns into that slick lubricant.
Okay, so now the joints are lubricated and the heart is pumping. We move into the core of the dynamic routine. Let's walk through the biology of some highly effective exercises you can actually do.
Sure.
The first one is called steam engines. You stand with your feet shoulder width apart, hands lightly placed behind your head. Then you drive your right elbow down and across your torso to touch your left knee, which you are lifting up into the air.
Now, from a muscular standpoint, this is exceptional for activating the hip flexors, the muscles that lift your leg, and the obliques along the side of your abdomen.
Okay.
But neurologically, it is an absolute powerhouse movement.
Why is that?
Because by crossing the midline of your body, bringing the right elbow to the left knee, the electrical signal actually has to cross the corpus callosum in your brain.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you are forcefully requiring the left and right hemispheres of your brain to communicate rapidly.
You are literally waking up both sides of your brain simultaneously.
Exactly.
But there is a huge caveat here for anyone doing this. Your hands are just lightly resting behind your head. You cannot pull your neck forward to meet your knee, or you risk straining your cervical spine.
Very important point.
You have to bring the knee all the way up to the elbow, not the other way around.
Aye.
Okay, next up is a core stability movement called the pillar bridge, which most of us just know as a plank.
Right, and what's critical to understand about the pillar bridge is that it's an exercise in anti-extension.
Anti-extension.
Yeah, you push up onto your elbows and toes, keeping your head tucked and maintaining a perfectly straight, rigid line from your ears to your ankles.
Okay.
You aren't moving, but your core is fighting gravity to keep your spine from collapsing downward.
So it's active tension.
Exactly. Holding this intense dynamic tension for just 30 seconds primes the abdominal wall to protect your spine when you later start, twisting and jumping in a game.
It basically builds a rigid protective cylinder around your spine. Now, here's an exercise that I thought was fascinating because it hacks your balance system. It's called the calf raise with neck rotation.
Oh, this is a brilliant neurological hack.
Right.
You perform a standard standing calf raise, pushing up high onto your toes to activate the lower leg. But at the exact peak of the raise, you rotate your head to look over your shoulder.
But why add the head turn? I mean, that seems like it just makes it unnecessarily difficult to balance.
Well, that is exactly the point. By turning your head while balancing on your toes, you're deliberately challenging your vestibular system.
And that's in the ear, right?
Right, the balance center located inside your inner ear.
Yeah.
You are forcing your brain to process shifting spatial awareness while simultaneously maintaining a muscle contraction.
Wow.
It dramatically improves your proprioception, which is basically your body's ability to know exactly where it is in physical space.
But safety is totally key here.
Yeah.
You do 5 controlled repetitions looking over the right shoulder, and then 5 controlled reps looking over the left.
Yes, controlled being the key word.
Because if you rapidly whip your head back and forth on every single rep, your vestibular system will overload, you'll get dizzy, and you will probably just fall over, which entirely defeats the purpose of injury prevention.
Absolutely. Control is everything in dynamic preparation.
The last specific movement we really have to discuss is called line pulling. So you widen your stance, drop down into a partial squat, and hold that squat to keep your leg muscles firing. Then you simulate grabbing a heavy rope and pulling it violently toward you, rotating your torso. And the physical therapy and sports science research specifically highlighted that this exact functional movement is used by Navy sailors to prepare for heavy fleet work.
Yeah, and the reason it is so highly regarded is because it trains the kinetic chain.
It's kinetic chain.
Right. If a sailor, or an athlete for that matter, tries to pull a heavy object using only their arm muscles, they will exhaust themselves immediately. Because power is not generated in the arms. Power is generated by pushing against the ground with your legs, transmitting that force upward through a rigid core, and finally expressing it out through the arms.
So by dropping into that squat and pulling, you're rehearsing the sequential firing of muscles from the ground up.
Exactly.
It's teaching the body how to act as one unified explosive machine rather than just a collection of separate parts.
Spot on. And that ground-up power generation translates directly to swinging a tennis racket, throwing a handball, or, leaping for a header in football.
Man, we have covered an immense amount of biological ground today.
We really have.
For you students of Sagrados Corazones, I want to crystallize the absolute non-negotiable takeaways for your next physical education class. First, abandon the chaos and follow the sequence.
Yes.
Start at the ankles and systematically work your way up to the neck. Force that venous return and ensure no joint goes unlubricated.
Second, pay attention to your internal dashboard. Your goal is a gradual elevation of your heart rate to that 120 to 160 beats per minute window.
Don't overdo it too early.
Exactly. You want to engage the aerobic system and break a sweat without drowning your muscles in lactic acid before the whistle even blows.
Third, and perhaps most importantly, stop putting your muscles to sleep.
Please.
Trade the old school static sitting stretches for dynamic functional movements. Rehearse the kinetic chain. Challenge your balance and tune the strings of your muscular system so they are ready to snap with power.
And finally, just realize that warming up is a neural event. You are crossing the hemispheres of your brain, increasing the conduction velocity of your nerves, and pulling your mind into a state of hyperfocus.
It totally transforms the warm-up from this boring, mandatory punishment into a scientifically engineered runway for athletic success.
It really does.
And I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, especially as students. We've just spent all this time proving how a 20-minute dynamic physical routine can fundamentally alter how your nervous system, joints, and muscles perform under pressure. We know that deliberate preparation changes the physical output.
The biological adaptations are just undeniable at this point.
So, if we know this works so flawlessly for the physical body, what would a cognitive warm-up look like?
Oh, that's interesting.
Think about your academic life. If you have a massive final exam coming up or you're sitting down for a grueling 2-hour study session, do you just open the book cold and try to floor the mental gas pedal?
No.
Or are you blowing a cognitive gasket by not prepping your brain first?
It's a fascinating concept. I mean, is there a mental equivalent to the steam engine or the Tiller Bridge?
Right.
Could you use a structured 5-minute routine of, logic puzzles or rapid-fire recall to dynamically stretch your neural pathways before a math test?
I challenge you to figure out what your own mental dynamic warm-up looks like. Keep questioning the old ways of doing things, keep hacking your own biology, and most importantly, never skip the preparation phase.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
Thank you for listening.